And good evening. I'm Trace Gallagher. It's 10 p.m. on the East Coast, 7 o'clock here in Los Angeles. And this is a breaking news edition of Fox News at Night. There are reports coming in that Israel has now begun its highly anticipated retaliatory strikes against Iran. Now, we are tracking these developments, and we are hearing that explosions have been heard over Iran proper, as well as in southern Syria, and explosions heard above Iraq. We do not know if any areas of Iraq were hit. We think there were some explosions in southern Syria, and there are reports of possibility of strikes in southern Iran near the Natanz and the Fordow nuclear facilities. Remember, these are the facilities that are said to be places that you can produce nuclear weapons. They also have a uranium conversion facility in Isfahan. And this is also in southern Iran, and there are reports that there have been airstrikes in that area as well.
Israel strikes back. The highly anticipated retaliation against Iran happened last night. The dust is cleared, and we now know what really happened. Biden was humiliated. It was Biden that got bombed. Despite the damage from the attack, the real fallout, as we'll find out in our live stream today, was the further damage done to the Biden presidency. And then to add insult to injury, we're also going to see how Biden has lost on yet another international front. Fox News is now admitting that the Ukraine war is completely lost. It's over. And it's Biden who ultimately has egg all over his face. We're going to see what it all means for a new world rising, and you've got a front row seat. But first, gang, our good friend Mike Lindell needs your help. Mike is one of the strongest patriots working tirelessly for the America First and MAGA movements in this country, and also happens to be a very close friend to this channel, as you know. From election integrity to protecting American businesses, Mike really does it all. And now, as a cabal of deep state lawyers and election machine companies are trying to take Mike down with frivolous lawsuits, he needs your support more than ever. Mike recently said he was going to fight every lawsuit until he wins and will never settle out of court with people who help rig the election. So, with this in mind, I want to remind you about the incredible MyPillow deals Mike is offering with my promo code Turley. Now, if you just click on the link in my description below, you can save well over 60% on all sorts of incredible MyPillow products. Of course, Mike is offering huge savings on the new and improved MyPillow 2.0. But gang, I would also recommend hugely Mike's My Slippers, as well as his amazingly comfortable bed sheets. These are some of the comfiest slippers and sheets I've ever owned. In fact, I would use that word to describe all of MyPillow's products. Comfy to the maximum. So don't wait, gang. Support Mike as he fights for election integrity and gets some extremely comfy things to boot. It's a win-win. Don't wait. Click on that link below or go to mypillow.com/Turley right now. So it is official. Israel has retaliated against Iran for Iran's bombing of Israel last weekend. So it's a retaliation against the retaliation. But it appears that the attack was very, very limited, very measured. Nothing akin to the hype that originally surrounded around 10 o'clock last night on Fox, as you saw. There were original reports that Israel was targeting Iran's nuclear facilities and particularly a major military air base near Isfahan. But Iranian officials have released video footage of Isfahan this morning, showing that there really was no significant damage and that life is carrying on as normal. So whatever the attack was last night, which I do understand Israel admitted to, it was extremely limited and measured. Clearly, all sides are trying to avoid escalation while maintaining their credibility, as it were. Nevertheless, for its part, Israel could not be happier to, at least in part, widen this war into a conflict with Iran, however measured, because, of course, America hates Iran. We're still very, very bitter over the way Iran humiliated us on the international stage back in '79 with the hostage ordeal. So Israel knows that by dragging Iran, again, at least in part, into this conflict, all of a sudden, all the criticism of the Israeli-inflicted genocide and mass starvations in Gaza, as the critique goes, all of that critique goes silent, at least when it comes to Washington officials. They hate, let's put it this way, they hate Iran more than they hate what Israel's doing in Gaza. And so it does appear that Netanyahu wants the United States to provide some much needed cover in order to conduct a multi-front war that, for the most part, wipes out their enemies in the region. Netanyahu wants to get rid of Hamas. He wants to get rid of Hezbollah. And he wants to, at least in part, confront Iran, because that confrontation awards him the sympathies of Washington, who've been dedicated to regime change in Tehran ever since the Islamic Revolution 40 years ago. And that enables him, with Iran brought into the theater, that enables Netanyahu to take out Hamas and Hezbollah as much as he can without critique. But that said, something much deeper, gang, is going on here. And I want to make sure you're all on the front lines of this. The Portuguese scholar Bruno Massais has a very good piece out. It just came out the other day. It's on the New Statesman, and it's entitled "The Iran Attack Changes Everything." And he's referring there to the original attack by Iran against Israel, when Iran sent their missile and drone attack on Israel back on April 13th, last weekend. And what Massais does here is he begins his article by contrasting the last time missiles were sent into Israel. And that was back in 1991, when Saddam Hussein launched that barrage of Scud missiles towards Tel Aviv and Haifa. And this latest attack from Iran, he both compares and contrasts with that Scud missile attack back in 91. Today, as back then, Washington was trying to convince Israel not to retaliate and risk escalating the conflict into a broader war in the Middle East. We were trying to contain that war to solely taking on Saddam Hussein, right? We didn't want it going beyond that. That's for sure. Israel's told this time to take the win, as it were. Iran's attack was not that serious. It was very measured. It was more ceremonial. It was a ceremonial retaliation against Israel's bombing of the Iranian consulate in Damascus, which, by the way, no Western country has yet to condemn, right? Israel destroys Iran's embassy in Damascus, kills several military commanders, and the Western world's hunky-dory with that. Of course, Iran has to respond to that, right? So no Western countries condemned that attack 2 weeks ago. So much for the rules-based international order and its rules of fairness. But had Iran really honestly wanted to inflict massive damage on Israel, the 13th of April attack would have looked very, very differently than it did. So the response was measured, and Israel appears to have shot down the vast majority of the missiles via their Iron Dome. I'm sure most of those missiles were dummy missiles anyway. Iran knew they were going to do that. They shot them down with their own defense missiles. So basically, the Biden administration would say, dude, take the win, saying to Netanyahu, take the win. You know, you looked great in front of the world. Iran supposedly failed in their attempt to retaliate. Take the win, right? So that represents a similarity between what happened in 91 and what happened last weekend. Is Washington, D.C. tried to get Tel Aviv to not retaliate and risk escalating the conflict. But as Massais points out, there's also a key difference between these two attacks. Back in 91, Washington was strong. Washington was powerful. Washington was heavily militarily engaged in the region, promising to destroy the missile launchers in Iraq. Don't take retaliation. We'll do it for you. We'll do it for you. We're going to knock out all of those Scud missile launchers. They're gone. Just give us time to do it. We're going to take it out. American forces In other words, we're positioned to destroy the threat. Whereas now, Biden he's in complete and total, he's impotent. I don't know what else to say. Biden in his complete and total incompetence is completely impotent in the region. The Houthis are making him look like a clown, cutting off the Red Sea to U.S. military equipment, military, to our ships and so forth. Biden is not promising to destroy the military capabilities of Iran. He's just telling Netanyahu, just don't respond, please. Please don't respond. Don't spread this war, and we all know why he's so nervous about it. It's not even just the catastrophe of what an increased escalation would be. It's the skyrocketing price of energy that'll follow an escalation in this conflict, which in turn would guarantee Biden's loss in November. So this leads Messias to the observation on how the Iranian attack against Israel last week really in the end changed everything. It signaled nothing less than the rising up of a new world and new geopolitical order. Up until last week, Iran always relied on proxies to carry out attacks on Israel on behalf of Tehran, right? Hezbollah, right? Or even Hamas to a certain extent. And Biden thought that by warning Iran with that stupid one-word warning, don't. Remember that? Remember, reporters asked Biden a couple of weeks back after Israel bombed Iran's consulate in Damascus. Biden was asked what he had to say to Iran retaliating. And he said, I got one word, don't. Don't. Well, behind the scenes, Biden was relying on the fact that Iran has up until now never directly attacked Iran, and he just assumed they wouldn't. Up until this point, they've relied on proxies, again, like Hezbollah, to carry out attacks on Israel. So he thought he could make himself look like he's in control. He knew ahead of time Iran would not respond directly because they never have. Well, obviously, as of last weekend, Tehran told Joe Biden where he could stick it. Tehran completely humiliated Biden by acting with a new boldness that profoundly damaged Israel's own sense of security. Israel now knows nations will attack it, and they will, if they want to, they will attack it hard, right? Remember, that was a very, very measured response on Iran's part. And we need to point out that Iran, again, in fairness, was pushed into a corner where they really had no choice. I mean, their international status was on the line. Again, if you don't know, 2 weeks ago, Israeli forces struck an Iranian embassy in Damascus, Syria, killing 7 military advisors, including 3 senior commanders. And the strike was a clear escalation in Israel's war against Iran's regional proxies, particularly in Syria, as well as in Lebanon via Hezbollah. And the strike forced Iran to retaliate. They had to. Both their international and their domestic credibility was on the line. And so Iran responded. They had to, right, last weekend. But again, they responded in a way that was very strategically savvy. They launched a very measured but yet dramatic response. Again, this was the first missile attack on Israel from another country afar since 1991. So this was certainly a big deal, but it was measured. It was not an onslaught. And what it did is it stammered Israel's sense of security on the one hand, and then forced Washington to pressure Israel to refrain from retaliation in order to avoid a wider regional escalation on the other. A warning, of course, that Israel just ignored. And that's the key to understanding what's really happening big picture here. Make absolutely no mistake, gang, the fact that Iran attacked Israel after Biden's one-word warning, don't, and the fact that Israel retaliated against Iran after Washington militated against it, suggests that both Iran and Israel do in fact share one thing in common. They both see Biden as a joke. They both see Biden as an abject clown, as a goof that deserves to be ignored. They simply do not take him or his administration seriously. Now, contrast that with Trump. This would never, ever have happened, ever, under Trump, because all sides, both Israeli and Iranian, they took Trump very, very seriously. By contrast, no one in any of this, no one gives Biden the time of day. No one on the world scene outside of the goofballs and the equal goofballs in Western Europe. No, and by the way, Biden's low poll numbers, we'll find in a moment, his poll numbers look golden when compared with someone like Macron's. Okay. So outside of these Western leaders, no one, 85% of the world's population gives Biden the time of day. And so that's why these Iranian strikes against Israel last weekend, in many respects, changed everything. It really does reveal a new world rising that's radically different from the one that was operative back in 1991 when Israel was first attacked by Saddam Hussein's Scud missiles. And we're going to see exactly what this new world looks like.